It's all in the hips. A lot of good riding starts in our hips, but many riders don't actually know where their hip joint is. So I'm starting off the horse for this video to show you exactly how you can find your hip joints. So what you're going to do is feel right in here, right where the crease of your pants would be if you were sitting, and just slowly move your knee in and out. And you'll feel deep in here just a little bit of movement. And that's where the femur is coming into the hip joint in the pelvis. Having an idea of where our hip joint is helps us visualize what we need to be doing in the saddle. It's deep in there, so it's not right on the outside here or right on the outside here. It's at the cross point of these two. But understanding where it is and how it functions is important to understanding how it functions best in the saddle. Some of this might be review from the last video where we talked about alignment, but the hips are so important that they need their own video here. So again, I want you to practice with me this time, but take your hand. You can do this even sitting in your office chair, sitting on your couch, wherever. And I want you to just kind of play with tipping your pelvis forward and back. And again, you'll find that spot where the seat bone is pointing down into the saddle and where this is perpendicular. This is again telling me that my hips are in the proper alignment. We also want to make sure that, like I mentioned in the last video, that we have soft, movable joints. What happens a lot of times is if you're holding tension in your hips, it's going to block the movement of the horse. So they're not able to move from the hind end, push the energy through, and we're not able to follow their movement in the same way. I'm going to demonstrate the difference that having soft hips versus holding tension in your hips can have to the horse. So I'm going to pick up the walk. Just have to wake Rumba up a little bit. So we don't want to have excess movement in the hips. We just want to allow the movement to gently move us around. So we don't want to be pushing and doing extra stuff because then she gets real confused. We also don't want to hold because as soon as I do that, she stops. We just want to let their movement move us while keeping this same position of our pelvis. A good way to indicate if you're allowing your hip to let the horse move and let the movement come from the hind end is put your hand on your thigh. When I put my hand on my thigh, I want to be able to see that my hand is going forward and slightly down. What this is telling me is I'm slightly opening up and letting that movement come through my hip. So that's a really easy way to just quickly tell that you're allowing that movement to come forward. There's a few things that might make it difficult for you to find this correct position in the saddle. And the first one is if your horse is wide. If your horse is wide, it can put a little bit more stress on the hip joint, especially if you're a rider that has a more narrow pelvis. A common misconception is that there are male and female pelvises. This isn't really the case. There are just people that have a more narrow set to their hip joints or a wider set to their hip joints. Bad saddle fit can definitely be a contributing factor to your pelvis not being in the correct position in the saddle. For example, if the balance of your saddle is too far forward, what this is going to do is constantly pitch you forward. And no matter how hard you try, you're not going to be able to find this perpendicular alignment that we're looking for. Same thing if your balance is too far back. You're going to end up always sort of back here and rounded. When you're back here, you end up being behind the horse's motion. If you are too far forward, you're going to be in front of the horse's motion. In front of the horse's motion can be a little dangerous, and behind, you just really are impeding their movement, and that's obviously not what we're looking to do. What you can do is drop your stirrups, drop your toe, and just get this feeling of your hips sitting down here in the saddle. This sort of takes away the variable of your stirrups, and you're just really feeling your seat in the saddle. A lot of the times, tight hips are actually a mental block. And to get past this, it really takes just getting more awareness and feeling fluid in your hips. So we're going to work on some unmounted exercises. If you scroll down to the downloads below this video, click on there, you'll see a few examples of some stretches that you can do out of the saddle to improve your hip mobility. I'll see you in the next video.